The battle between AMD's gaming titans, the 9800X3D and the 7800X3D, is here. But are the performance gains really worth the upgrade? In this video, I'll be comparing these CPUs across 8 popular titles: League of Legends, DayZ, Hunt Showdown, Black Ops 6, Warzone 4, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, and Star Citizen. At the start of each section, I'll briefly explain the testing scenarios and settings used, because benchmarking numbers are only meaningful when the conditions are clear and consistent. Think of it like comparing sports cars. 2 lap times on different tracks don't tell you much, but when 2 cars run the same track, the results actually mean something. Similarly, FPS comparisons are only valuable when you know the racetrack, so to speak, or in this case, the settings and scenarios being tested. Now, let's dive into the benchmarks. Feel free to use the timestamps below to skip to the games you're most interested in. Alright, here's the setup we're working with for both CPUs. We've got a Gigabyte X670E Aorus Extreme motherboard paired with 64GB of SK Hynix A-Die DDR5, a Gigabyte Aorus 10K Gen 5 M2 NVMe, and an MSI Gaming Trio 4090. Cooling is handled by a Corsair H115i Elite 280mm AIO. RAM timings were at 6000 CL30 with Titan secondary and tertiary timings. X3D Turbo mode was enabled for both chips. The 9800X3D had a -40 CO value set for PBO, while the 7800X3D was only stable at -30. For the League of Legends test, I loaded a co-op online game against AI. I used a medium preset. The 9800X3D outperforms the 7800X3D across all resolutions in this title, with the biggest gains at 1080, around a 19% higher average FPS. As the resolution increases, the gains decrease a little bit, but still 12% gain at worst in average FPS. Also seeing increased 1% and 0.1% lows, giving smoother gameplay in all resolutions. For DayZ, I loaded into an official Livonia server with a 60-player limit. I used the high graphics preset. The 9800X3D demonstrates significant performance gains across average and 0.1% lows, especially at 1080 and 1440. And for some reason in 4K, the 0.1 was almost the same, but the average and 1% were still around 15 to 20% higher. For Hunt Showdown 1896, to decrease the number of variables, I used the shooting range as my testing ground. I ran the high graphics preset. The 9800X3D here provides notable improvements in 1% and 0.1% lows at 1080, enhancing smoothness, while gains at 1440 and 4K are more modest, reflecting diminishing returns at higher resolutions. To test Black Ops 6, I ran the in-game benchmark in 1080, 1440, and 4K, and I used my pure optimized presets, which can be found in my Black Ops 6 optimization video. Black Ops 6 was the title where these 2 chips had the smallest difference. In 1080, there was about a 5% difference in average FPS, close to 10% in 1% FPS, and again close to 10% difference in 0.1% FPS, and that's at the most CPU heavy resolution. When I move up to 1440 and 4K, the numbers are within a couple percent of each other. So especially in Black Ops 6, there isn't that much difference between these 2 chips, because it seems like it's more GPU based. For Warzone 4, I dropped into a solo battle royale on Urzikstan in between Zerevan suburbs and Shaheen Manor, and I ran a route there. I'm using the same pure optimized presets from the Black Ops 6 test, which can again be found in my Black Ops 6 optimization video. Unlike the regular Black Ops 6 benchmark, in 1080 and 1440 there was a noticeable difference in average FPS 1% and 0.1% FPS, about 15 to 18% difference. In 4K, however, the average FPS was just about equal, and maybe an 8 to 10% difference on the 1% and 0.1% FPS numbers. So you can see when the resolution is kicked up that the GPU takes over more of the performance in this title. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a new title with great graphics and a lot of nice looking cinematics. For this test, I used the high graphics preset. No matter what the resolution in this title, there was very little difference between these two chips. In 1080, there was about a 1.5% difference in average FPS, maybe a 3% difference on the 1% and 0.1. In 1440, there was about a 2.5% average FPS difference and 5% difference on 1% FPS. Again, in 4K, about a 5% difference in average FPS and 4% on the 1% FPS and literally equal on the 0.1% FPS. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is on the Unreal 5 engine and has been known to be very tough on even the best hardware. For this test, I used a medium graphics preset with DLSS. This was a title where there was a large difference at every resolution. In 1080, there was a 30 to 40% difference across all metrics. In 1440, it was about a 40% difference. And in 4K, there was a 40% average FPS increase, 56% increase in the 1% FPS, and a 33% increase in the 0.1% FPS for the 9800X3D. Star Citizen is known for being a very tough game to run. I used the TISA spaceport out of Lorville as my testing ground for this test. I was using the medium graphics preset here. Overall, the numbers are still pretty low, with the 9800X3D coming in around 49 and the 78 at 42, even in 1080. But that did mean there was about a 16 to 20% increase for the 9800X3D across all resolutions. The 1% were on average around 5% higher, but equal in 4K. And then on the 0.1s, there was about a 5% difference in 1080 and 1440, and a 15% difference in 4K. So overall, the performance still wasn't great, but it was better relatively for the 9800X3D. So overall, the 9800X3D outperforms the 7800X3D on average by about 15% across all 8 games tested here at 1080p. The largest performance gap is seen at S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 at 33%, and the smallest gap is in Indiana Jones at 2.75%. In 1440, the 9800X3D leads by an average of 13.5% across all 8 games tested here. Largest gap again is in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 at 38.79%. Smallest gap is in Hunt Showdown at 1.98%. And lastly, if we average out the differences in all 8 games here, the 9800X3D outperforms the 78 by about 12.5% in 4K. The largest gap is in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 at 41%, and the smallest gap is in Warzone 4 at 0.5%. Now, the number is a little skewed because we have 41% on S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, but then we have 0.5% in Warzone 4, 1.5% in Black Ops 6, 5% in Hunt Showdown, and 5% in Indiana Jones. So if we take out S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2's outlier 41%, we actually get an average increase of about 8.5% in 4K. And finally, for those who are interested in power and temp numbers, the 9800X3D averaged a temperature of around 51.5 degrees Celsius, with the 7800X3D coming in around 57.9. There was about an 11% difference there, with the 78 running warmer. In terms of power consumption, the 9800X3D averaged around 66.8 watts, and the 78 was around 51.9 watts. 22% more power usage on the 98. Overall, very low numbers for both power and temps, but they do kind of flip-flop on those values. To wrap things up, the 9800X3D offers a solid performance boost over the 7800X3D, though the gap varies by title. It has slightly higher power consumption but runs cooler, making it a great choice for those seeking peak performance. Both CPUs are monster gaming chips, but with the inflated prices of the 9800X3D in December 2024, right now the 7800X3D offers better value in my opinion. However, if the 9800X3D returns to its retail price, it becomes a better value at just $30 more. Now, this is just pure speculation on my part, but I think when the 9800X3D's price does return to Earth, that we might see the release of a lower cost 7700X3D. Alright, that's all I got for this one. I hope this info was helpful. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos for more detailed benchmarks and optimization tips. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.